She's the bomb. See, it takes a village, folks. It takes a fucking village. And that's another important thing. I'm a very independent person, fiercely independent. But I realize that people around you are important. My friend, who I'm conversing with right now, it's important to do this. So this is going to be a shorter and bridged version, but it's also filled with all kinds of challenges. And that's okay. We still roll with it. So let's go in this, and we'll deal more, I think, with this. So it would almost be... so here's what I'm going to ask you on the fly.
Sure.
Do we want to delve deeper into this stuff, or do we just want to like spitball like on this stuff and the stuff that we truly like on biases and maybe a little bit of cryptocurrency, and then we can really like break down the next episode? Or what are you feeling, buddy?
Well, we had technical difficulties, and we can fix all those in post for the YouTube, but for the live. Okay. There's nothing we can do, so I figured we just move on, and whatever we get out of this, we get. And if we have some good video, great. If not, then we don't.
That's okay too. Yeah. Learning from this, I think, also is just builds your frame of reference. Like, builds my frame of reference. I am also, as a hobby, as an aside, as a hobby, I write. One of the things that I run into problems with all the time is in the POV that I fall into. And when I say you externally, other people, I also a lot of times mean me as well. I mean us. I mean we. So that's interesting, a weirdness or dichotomy that I think writers go through, because we kind of relate to people like on an innate level, on a very most basic level, which I think is pretty awesome. And that's why I identify as, on our first up podcast, as a philosopher. Because I'm a seeker of truth in as much as I could understand it throughout my surroundings and the ability that I have, and the people that I've been in touch with that can keep me in check, or check my sources or my trust level. So yeah. But any other things you would like to say before we move a little bit on?
No, let's go ahead and proceed.
Let's go.
You want me to?
What do you want to go into? I'm going to let you go. Yeah.
So. Money, value.
Money.
Everybody needs it. Nobody ever seems to have enough.
True.
Except the Federal Reserve and other central banks, who have the power and the ability to create it, right? To create money. Right, from nothing.
Okay. Yeah. Let me say something here.
Sure.
One of the weirdest things growing up as an American, also growing up, I was brought up in a religious sense, very religious, and in a sect of religion, aka a Jehovah's Witness, who really did not. They persuaded me in a way, or I was taught, really, I was indoctrinated to not look into those things, to not even be interested in those things, because they have no value for us, because we were for God's kingdom, right? It had nothing to do with the world of manly affairs. So it was left to my adult life to suss out, after I left the religion, how do I distinguish those things? The Federal Reserve seems to be a unique situation within the world. Would you agree with that?
Well,
Entropy Sword?
It's not unique.
Are there any other things like that?
There's other central banks, right? There's a European central bank. China has a central bank. So
those are banks, though. And Federal Reserve may be a bank, but it seems to be something else entirely.
Right, but if you look at the Wikipedia page, you'll see that it's both a government entity, legally, and also a private entity, legally. And as far as I'm aware, maybe somebody will completely blow this up, it's the only thing that's like that. It's the only system that we have that's
only entity like that.
Government and private, right?
And private.
Now,
yeah,
it makes complete sense for China. China is this centrally planned economy. They're very much about state ownership, especially as being a socialist-ish country, right? So that makes sense that they would have a system that controls the distribution of money.
Right.
It doesn't make as much sense for the United States to have it, for a free market economy, and it didn't for a long time, right? It wasn't created with the Constitution. It wasn't created with the founding of the United States. It was added in, I believe, 1913. And there was a new...
That's so interesting.
There was a new formation where Congress, which had the power to issue money, sort of gave it up and said, we're worried about stock market crashes, we're worried about inflation, we're worried about these things, or at least we were told to worry about them. And so in response, they created the Federal Reserve, which sole job, I believe they have two things in their charter, which is to have maximum employment and GDP creation, so maximum value out of the economy, and also to control inflation.
Maximum employment really states maximum ability of people under any type of society, which is how I would interpret it in my layman's mind. But that's an interesting way that you put it. I get that. Interesting also too. So we're gonna go, guys. I'm just gonna say, because my mind goes in many different directions, and I'm gonna go conspiracy theory here, just because it feels like that. It's like, wait, why? Like, why would we need that at that time? Mm-hmm. When was the first market crash? Do you know?
Well, there's been market crashes as long as there have been markets, right?
Well, when was this, like the actual, like a stock exchange?
Right. So
like when did it start, and when did it have its first crash? Because that's interesting. Go ahead.
The crash, if I remember right, that the Federal Reserve is sort of addressing is a 1907 panic.
Oh, okay.
And so
it was already established before that. Okay.
Right. The market was already around, the stock market, and bonds were being issued by the government, but there wasn't this mandated control of those systems, in that they were going to be guided, right? There was more of the free market, animal spirits economy. The people will move the market around. If you've heard the term the invisible hand of the market, right? That it would sort of self-adjust itself. And in doing that, it kept creating these boom-bust cycles of sort of too much enthusiasm. The market invests in crazy things that will never pay off. Those all fall apart. And then everybody's really destitute because the system didn't invest wisely. And so the Federal Reserve was put in place, I think they would tell you, to stop that cycle of boom and bust. Now, that hasn't really happened, because we still have recessions. We have stagflation. We have the Great Depression. We have the Great Recession, which we've actually lived through. And now we have this, whatever is happening as a collateral of the
It's being called different things, but there's not been settled on a thing we call it. So let me also say this, because my mind goes in many different directions. Mm-hmm. Oppositely of the conspiracy theory, I could see a very positive thing about this, and some people might not like this. Just on the same level of, you may not have liked the conspiracy theory train of thought that just came about because of just data that I've heard. Right? Doesn't mean I believe it or truly go this is something I'm positing. Like, I believe it is a state of fact. Right? It's like, it's an interesting thought. Let's pursue that. And that is that it could be that people did notice patterns, and people that may be more educated than they noticed themselves than their laymen around them, and said, we need to do something about this. And we actually do see this, because this is the thing that we do every day. And maybe people don't see that we do this every day because they're in different levels of poverty, right? Maybe they're not as well off as we are. We've been doing these things for a long time. Yeah, boo-hoo. It's not as good for them to be destitute and fucking dying on a day-to-day basis back in the day. But we do see these things, and ultimately, if we do see the future and how it could be where we pull people out of poverty, this will be very advantageous and positive for society as a whole. I can see that as people going okay, well, if that's the case, we need to do this for some people that are trying to gather a hordes version, i.e. most of the ability to gain control of both power and money to their own devices and make it more of a free thing.
Right.
So I'm going to allow the benefit of the doubt for everything because, again, this is the Zero Trust podcast. I don't trust any of my things that I believe in or that I'm thinking about. But my thoughts come up because I'm curious and inquisitive. Okay? So I want to keep referencing back to these things because it's very important that we're not trying to posit something and prove something is true or false. We're trying to have investigations about these very important things that we're going through.
Right. So I guess what we're talking about, what we're really trying to suss out is where does money come from and who has the ability to create it.
Right.
For a long time in history, money was coined, minted, right? And that meant that precious metals, gold, silver, were the basis of exchange as a really good way to transfer value between people. As we move from, I'll give you this sheep for 5 apples, right? The barter system falls away and a new coinage system comes into play. And now there's this huge amount of effort that you need to go through to create money. You have to send people out into the wilderness, hack away at some rocks, do some smelting, get your face on the coin, right? Press the coins, do all of these things. And that always constrained the money supply. And that was the way that humanity functioned for a long time.
Right. Can you stop there for a minute?
Sure.
Can you stop there for a minute? Because this is really important. Okay. Right. So these are one of the things that I really love. And over the course of these series is Entropy Sword me become very annoyed with. But it's okay. Because I'm going to bring back to this because my mind is like squirrel. Okay? And it is money. What is money to us as humans? What the fuck does it actually mean? Because we kind of glossed over that, right? And we're Zero Trust podcast, so like, what the fuck do things mean? Because it's important. It's important to actually educate and understand what we are taking in before we can actually be able to figure it out and then like posit something else that may be better than the previous information that we had. Okay? So money, as I first saw it, came in Wikipedia and actually drove me to an article for capitalism, which was interesting. I said, oh, wait, that's not where we need to be. And it had a nice little like telling about it, which I think Graham's going to go into more, but I'm going to go with this and then we're going to let Entropy Sword continue on his thing. Sorry, I'm keep flipping between his actual name and his moniker, but it's okay. I'm going to call him Entropy Sword and you guys can deal with it. Just create that as a fun little aside about what we do here. But money is a medium of exchange by which humans pay for things or a unit of account or store of value. There's the key word, value. What do we value? What do you have of value to exchange to me for something that you have of value so that we can give each other? Sometimes we don't have them necessarily right now. Sometimes it's a little bit of bill of sale. It's a whole thing that you hold and that you are in the future wanting to be like fulfilled in recompense. There are different ways to do it, but understand what money is. It's this idea that we created as we evolved as people to go like, this is how we exchange for goods of service. It is an interesting thing. I think that we should spend eventually in the future a time that we actually really talk about it because it's important to how we evolved as people. And it's really an important path. Okay. Between what we do and how we go, like, I agree to this. In the Zero Trust podcast, I think it's really important. But with that information, you guys can look it up on your own. I'm going to let Entropy Sword continue.
Well, now I don't want to continue. I want to dive deeper into what you just said.
Let's go.
Because it's really the question of the value, right? We can posit that the people in the past valued gold and silver because it was rare, it was hard to get, it was useful for making ceremonial things. It perhaps had some sort of religious connotations, especially, I think,
mythological, pagan as well.
Right? There's certain like spiritual things about gold and silver that are very old. going back to alchemy, which was the attempt to create
turning everything into gold. Yes,
right. The so-called base metals into the noble metals, right? So all of that, there's like this huge history of why these things became valued and entered into the subconscious. But as capitalism sort of advanced, it ran up into the fact that, hey, we need more of this stuff than we can actually get out of the ground.
I think it created this level of agreement, right? Mm-hmm. It created this level of agreement like, okay, guys, hey, we've got this spot to where we can agree. That's what money is. That's what gold is. We can agree on this is a level of exchange that we're playing with, right? This is what we do. This is the tit for tat. This is a thing that we exchange, which is so interesting because in these conversations, I really didn't think with that. That's how I operate. But in how I deal with people that I operate on a day-to-day level with, I don't do anything for free, and I don't choose to anybody I interact with to do anything for free for me because it's a desired thing of exchange. If I'm going to get something for your hard work, your effort, anything that you do, I would like you to do something, and for that, I need to in effect give you something that is of equal value to you, aka exchange for those things. So that's very important to me. It's one of those things that's almost built into my soul. It's like that's the only way I can stay true to myself to be able to actually work in any way, right, with external people, forces, other ideals of beings beside myself. So, I think that's really important to distinguish. I love that you deep dive there. Go ahead.
So, okay, we have this idea that we all understand value, and for value to be valuable, we all have to have the same idea of value, right? If I come up to you and I'm like, I've got this handful of sand, I'd like a burrito. You would look at me and you'd say, that has no value, right?
Yeah, I live in Southern California. I can get sand walking down the hill. That doesn't help me.
Does nothing, right? It's useless.
Right.
But I can hand you this piece of cotton, right, with a little plastic strip in it and say, here you go, that's $10. And you look at it and you say, yep, that's $10. Here's your burrito. Now, a piece of cotton with a little plastic strip in it is about as useful as a handful of sand. But the way that we treat it are completely different.
It's much different. Why?
Because we've all agreed that there's value. Now,
there it is. Value and agreement. Continue. I love this. Love this. Continue.
A backing to that value to precious metals all over the world. But in America, if you can go back, you can find an old enough dollar bill. It'll say, hey, you can take this and you can redeem this for $1 worth of silver anywhere, right? It's not anywhere, but it has an equivalent value of silver. It's a silver dollar. It's backed by silver. But there wasn't enough silver, there wasn't enough gold for the machinery of capitalism to continue running at its maximum pace. Right? We couldn't get enough gold and silver out of the ground to have everything backed by metal to where there were more dollar bills floating around than silver that we could exchange. And they became untethered, right?
Right. Well, so, okay. So here's what I would like to do with this conversation is I would actually like to put it on hold.
Okay.
Because there was the introduction to that idea, exchange value. Okay. An exchange value or exchange rate, which you can translate now to, if anybody's heard that, they would think the stock market, because that's what we hear is exchange rate. Okay, so we're going to have to go into that more in a further podcast because we need to do investigation because seriously, the way that how we determined agreement on a thing that is not as readily available to anybody that could find it, i.e. like a very difficult thing, right? It was like somebody's not going to stumble across it, so we'll use that as the basis for our thing in which we value things which we will trade, something that is more static than any other thing in the world. Now because of technology, that's changed. But now also because of technology, maybe that's not a thing that we base it off of. But that's still very important into understanding how we figured out and resolved the individual humans on a tribal level coming up to not just trading pelts and other humans and things for other things of like value, but this holding pattern of we have this intermediary. We have this thing that is better than all of us that we don't necessarily want to deal in because gold is soft. It's pretty. Other than that, it's not even the prettiest thing. It's just one of those things that is so difficult to find, but we can rate it off of it. And I think that's the thing that I'm just now understanding that that's why we created that, but also let's do some investigation there because discerning minds want to know, like myself. So that's, I think, where we'll stop there. But we can continue on, if you would like to, into the Federal Reserve, if we accept that for now, as obviously that's what happened, and let's go from there.
Right. So let's take that as a separate discussion of the creation of value and gold and silver and all that. At some point, we detethered from those traditional stores of value.
Right. To whereas you have something like right in your face, right? Like you have a family, you have goat of herds. Let me try that again. A herd of goats. Anything that you have that you can trade, right? That's my dyslexia kicking in, by the way, guys. And to whereas we're in modern day, to whereas it's like we don't trade for trade, right? We trade for in this intermediary called the dollar, or the yen, or any intermediary that is money.
Right.
So there we go.
That's what we
the exchange is money.
Fiat currency. Not backed by anything except for the trust in the currency itself, which is backed by
the trust.
Right? So
yes,
money requires trust now. And
yes, it does.
That's sort of a problem because we have to trust that the Federal Reserve does in fact have our best interests at heart, is trying to do its best to, mandate these things like limited inflation, like maximum employment, right? And we see them act aggressively, very aggressively.
Explain that again. It sounds like, so I'm going to call it out every time that you say something strongly, like words like that, and I'm going to say you're creating a narrative. So like, go ahead and speak on that.
How do I put this? The Federal Reserve can create money out of nothing, and will do so at any time that they feel it's necessary. Whenever
and we don't even know who they is, right?
Know who they are. I mean, you can pop up the Wikipedia and you look at all the governors of all the different banks that make up the Federal Reserve System, and they have a really super dense economic outlook, and they're given current economic conditions, and therefore we're going to blah blah blah. They're doing stuff, and they're doing stuff through their open market operations, where they're basically buying things with money that they create. So I have a mortgage that I want to sell. Nobody's going to buy a mortgage right now because the people who are living in that house may not pay. The Federal Reserve comes in and says, don't worry about it, bank. We'll buy those mortgages from you. We'll take those off your balance sheet. We'll put it on our balance sheet. Doesn't matter. We're the Federal Reserve. We can always make more. Right.
And they're actively doing this. So they are a player in the game, and they actually fulfill the needs of the regular modern day citizen, because modern day citizens have assets in this thing that we've already agreed upon, which is money. And they're saying we can add to this because they
So
for better or for worse, they create money. Go ahead.
Right. Not only do they create money, but they also create the cost of money, the interest rate.
I don't know if that's true. They may create the interest rate, but also doesn't the actual U.S. government create and choose the interest rates, or is that the Federal Reserve?
Federal Reserve sets the interest rate.
Sets the interest rate. So that's interesting. Does the U.S. government? I thought everybody. I was under the assumption that the government chose the interest rate. Maybe not necessarily. Maybe the the Federal Reserve does. Do you see how I even have zero trust in Mr. Entropy Sword and his thing that says I think that's true? I don't know. That's still an open question for me that I will have to follow.
That out. If you don't believe me, go ahead and look and see how the interest rate, the prime interest rate, is set, and you'll see that the Federal Reserve meets and has a conversation about it and decides, given the economic conditions right now, we better set it to 1%. We better set it to 0.75%. We better set it to 0.5%, right? And so they control both the supply and, to some degree, the velocity of money, how much money is moving through the system and how quickly, right?
Right.
Then, in this Great Recession, 2007, 2008,
the housing recession is what you're talking about,
right? There was
banking lens and stuff. Go ahead.
Freddie Mae,
Freddie Mac and whatever the fucking other May thing was. Yeah.
They go ahead and fail, and Federal Reserve has to print out a whole bunch of money, and more people are starting to this doesn't seem right. Like, money out of nowhere. Why are these people in charge? And there becomes a kickback from these people who are kind of cypherpunks. And they want to make a new sort of cash, a new sort of money that is like the internet. It's internet money, where it's distributed, it's run on software that's open source that everybody understands. And instead of being based on how hard it is to pull metal out of the ground, right? What they decided to base it on was how much compute resource can you contribute to the network. And that was the beginning of this thing called Bitcoin. And so
cryptocurrency.
Or cryptocurrency, right? But Bitcoin was the first implemented cryptocurrency. It wasn't the first idea of cryptocurrency. There was Hashcash and some other experimental systems. But nobody ever put it all together and came out with this idea. And then this pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto, pops up and says, I've got the full solution, starts talking with people on different message boards, say, hey, you can run this node. You can have this ledger of all the transactions. We can all run it together. We can all cross-verify it. And we can have a secure method of value exchange without having to rely on this centralized system called the Federal Reserve that may not be trustworthy.
Right.
Okay. Well,
cool.
Why should I trust you, Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto?
Right. So you're going to stop there because what I would like to do is we glossed over a lot of things, guys.
Oh, yes, we did.
So just to let you know, obviously he introduced this concept, which it does obviously exist and is in full force right now today. It doesn't mean that it is widely accepted or used, but it seems to become more and more prevalent in everybody's everyday common speak. And that is cryptocurrency, and it being more of a thing that is stable that people are looking into, including regular houses that invest in things. So to the transition from what we were just talking about to this seems a little disjointed. Please bear with us. This is what we're doing to actually understand. And the way you do that, I think, is you just have again, I keep referencing back to this, conversations. And that's what this is. Why I'm stopping him, and I'm sure the Entropy Source, God damn it, let's just get on with it, is that it's important to me, right? It's important to me that we understand that those things that you may have been I was just really into the fucking Federal Reserve thing, and let's find out more about that. Yes, we will. We will fall. I think we will go deeper down the rabbit hole in many different things, but we need to, I think, get through this thought process of these things that are coming about so quickly in this era that we are in right now of upheaval in the way that we do things regularly. Everybody's working from home in the world, not just America, and things are changing. Things are opening up now, but still, this is very important. So please bear with us as we go all over the place, but this is where we are now. We will further go back in time and do more deep dives on things, but this is where we are. So this is going to be, especially for the next 3 to 5 podcasts, I'm just throwing that out there as a random number, but we will like be like ad hoc doing this stuff, figuring out the audio sources, video sources, and having a good time. I hope you guys bear with us as we do that. Go ahead, Andrew.
So, and that's really the whole dichotomy that I kind of wanted to set up. And there's so much that you're absolutely right. We need to investigate. We need to go back and have a deep dive onto why gold and silver were considered money. We need to have a deep dive into the origins of banking. We need to have a deep dive into the origins of the Federal Reserve and all of the different pieces and parts. There's a really good book called...
And its connection with the government, which is weird.
Jekyll Island, which I want to throw out there. That's a really good book if you want to read that. There's all these sources that we could deep dive into, and we will. But we need to set up the whole groundwork of what this podcast is going to explore first. And that's what we're trying to... That's why we're covering so much ground.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have all of these areas that we're gonna investigate, but first we need to even know what is it that we want to investigate. And value in money is something that I think we both want to investigate pretty deep.
Absolutely. Value especially, because it's one of those things that I think we're just off on, everybody. So if anybody watching ever has an inkling, as I'm sure you're going to, and I've already poked some into Entropy Source, even though I know that's not his full thought process on the things that he thinks about and he believes in. But like, I feel at times, and I'm sure you guys listening to this could be thinking he's creating a narrative of what he's setting up for. I'm going to suggest that you're going to be sorely mistaken, because he's actually just like thinking these or communicating these things because they're important to him to make that follows his questioning, that's making him question himself, going like, what's going on? Like, it is really interesting how it goes. So if any of you have sources, if any of you have you're creating this narrative and debunking that, please, by all means, that is a part of this Zero Trust podcast. Don't trust us. We are absolutely not a trustable source.
No.
Prove that fucking wrong. From it, we will create, hopefully, the most reliable, trusting source that we can actually value and move towards from. That's, I think, the important thing, as he's shaking his head, that's the important thing that we are trying to create. That truly is one of the things that I value in the thing that we really are doing here. So I just want to say my piece, because I've been struggling over starting the last podcast, our first podcast, and doing this one. How do I come to terms with all of the things that I'm bringing up ideas with, the things that I want to investigate, which there are so many, as I identified in the first podcast, that I am a philosopher at heart. I want to know all the things. I don't want your bases to belong to us, but I want to understand why bases belong to anyone. What's the drive? Right. What's the reason?
Right.
So that's the thing for me.
Yeah. Because that's, in my investigations, in my thinking, I've been too biased both ways, right?
Okay. Me too.
The Federal Reserve is definitely evil. It was a conspiracy. It was designed to make the ultra wealthier and control the rest of the population. And there's also the idea that Bitcoin is magic internet money and will save us all. Both of those narratives, I think, are false.
Agreed.
Neither one captures anywhere close to the amount of actual nuance and subtlety and complexity of the history of these things, right? We can't possibly... Right, that's... Okay, let me get real with you. Human beings love to form these narratives.
Absolutely, dude.
And then it solves the question in their head. I don't need to think about this anymore because I've come to my conclusion. Federal Reserve bad, Federal Reserve always bad, don't trust them. And then I can slide down whatever conspiracy theory rabbit hole I need to justify those beliefs, right?
Right.
Or Bitcoin is a scam. Bitcoin is a government operation. Bitcoin is like, there's all these things that you could start to create these narratives, And once you latch into that narrative of this is true, and you'll find sources. If you go out looking for sources, right? You're
with that
bias,
intuition, with that bias in mind, right? Exactly right.
You'll have that natural human tendency to, confirmation bias, the things that agree with
there it is
are true.
Yes.
And the things that don't, right, conflict, I'll just accept, right? Because they're already part of my narrative. So they must be true, right?
Exactly.
We're trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So I'm throwing out narratives, but none of the narratives that I'm throwing out are true, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Right. And do you believe to be true? But I have information that is interesting that you want to delve further into, is what it feels like.
They have enough power in society. They have enough effect in society that they're definitely worth investigating. It's definitely worth investigating what the Federal Reserve is doing.
Right.
That's a strong claim, but I'm willing to stand by that one. Okay?
Right, absolutely.
Is having enough of an effect on society. I saw a Twitter exchange between Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling about Bitcoin. Now, I don't care what you think about Bitcoin, but that's a fucking interesting thing. That there's a Twitter conversation between Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling. Because J.K. Rowling posted on Twitter, maybe she's trolling everybody, but she's like, can you explain Bitcoin to me? And then, that every internet white knight in the world was like, hey, yeah, absolutely we can. It's having an effect. It's in the conversation. And so I'm trying to understand
how it reaches the far and wide now. Okay.
And why we're even having this conversation.
Right. Yeah. It shouldn't even be thought about, right? Like, if it's not truly important, if it's not going to be affecting, why would it even be on the table? Why would people be it? Again, I'm sorry. J.K. Rowling is not necessarily anybody in finance, though. Granted, somebody can argue that because she has a lot of money because of something that she created that resonated with people and allowed her to obtain, through exchange that we talked about, a lot of fucking money. So she gets to ask the question, and people in droves listen and are also listening as she poses the question and waits for the response.
Right.
Her and her very active followers, just because she created some wealth somehow via exchange, i.e. of ideas. And I know some people hate that, the marketplace of ideas. I get that. It's pretty funny the way that comes out, but it truly is. It's the marketplace of ideas. Why are we so fascinated with these people that really don't have anything to do with it, though have made their way by creating this ability to create value of their ideas that has affected so many people, that has got them thinking about these things, that has fostered a very a young group of people to believe in magic, which I think is amazing. Not truly believe in magic, but you guys know what I mean.
Maybe some do.
Love that idea.
It's this idea that now there's a global conversation. Everyone's involved. Everyone's on the internet. We're casting. J.K. Rowling's tweeting. The president's tweeting. Everybody's in this sphere. The new sphere. NOO sphere, right? Look that up. Check out what that is. Do some investigation there. There's this consciousness, or consciousness is a bad word. I don't want to claim that. There's this layer of
awareness, maybe
culture.
We'll just say layer. Okay.
There's a layer of culture in the E&M Banks sense. Culture, right?
What does that mean? E&M Banks. I don't know what that means.
He's a science fiction author. He wrote the series about the culture. What culture is.
Okay.
We'll have a discussion on that. That's a deep dive of what culture is, right? But
yeah, but that's the hard term. I didn't even know what it is. So people need to have frame of reference for it.
It's what we all collectively believe, or is collectively available for us to...
Collective consciousness, basically?
Yeah. Collective unconsciousness and consciousness, right? All of the stuff that's out there on the internet is sort of this extension or expression of what was in our heads 25 years ago before the internet was invented. Right?
Got it.
Sort of got expressed out and expanded upon, and is now it's reflecting back into us, right?
Okay.
As these things do, right? As the systems that we create them to do certain things, but they have an effect on us that we may not have at first anticipated.
Right.
So, again, zero trust. What are all these systems that are affecting us, that are influencing us? These ideas, these narratives that are out there. We got to go out, we got to find them, and we got to start to pick them apart to sort of understand them. And
shed light on them.
Yep. That's what we're trying to do. And that's all we're trying to do. What are these narratives?
Absolutely. What are these narratives? And having good conversations. Mm-hmm. And those conversations will also involve other people. They will involve people that will be in the chat guiding our conversations as well. But like, we are starting with with the conversations that we have and that what we believe is on people's minds.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's on our minds. Not that our minds are more important than others. It's just what we want to talk about. So I think this is important, and this is what we have so much that we want to talk about. Like, seriously, it's like all of these things. Just in this, we were like, oh, we need to take a deep dive on that. Oh, we need to take a deep dive on that as well. Right? The money in exchange, the Federal Reserve, the example that you talked about with what is, actual conscious or what the fuck is it called?
Culture?
Shared consciousness, as well as shared the shared unconsciousness.
Yeah.
So which could be driving us, which also is a tap into the thing that I very much love, which is mythology, and how mythology drives us for a very long time, and how it probably guided people that did create the what the fuck is it called? The Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were guided by oh my God, that this wisdom that they have been a part of. And because they feel that the actual layman would not understand. And I get that. Because to explain everything for them to get to a level to be able to make decisions may take so long. And if you don't have the ability, you may not even be able to get there. I may not be able to get there. And I'm not saying that I am any better than any other layman. I may not be able to get there, honestly, in these conversations. But I'm still willing to try. And this is what these conversations are about. So it's almost like we, both Entropy Sword and I, need to almost rebrand it as the Zero Trust Podcast Conversations.
Yeah.
Because it truly is conversations that we're having to try to unearth what is going on and what is truth and what was said as truth, and maybe it's not so much, and let's find a new one.
Yep. And
if anything,
what I would love is to post this up on YouTube and to get a whole bunch of, hey, here's what I think about the Federal Reserve. Tell me what you think. I know there's people who have very strong opinions. Tell me what you think.
Yes.
Tell me what you think about Bitcoin. Tell me what you think about the blockchain, about cryptocurrency, about history, right? Throw out those narratives and join the conversation. That's really what this is about, is inviting people to come in here, bring all of your narratives, and let's apply this zero trust idea and see if we can break them down and find where the value is and where the trust and the truth could actually be located within them.
That was very articulate. Thank you. Seriously, it's almost like it's one of those things to where it's just a lot of people state oh, you know what they need to teach you in school? Mm-hmm. Right? It's that argument, right? It's they need to teach you about personal finance. They need to teach you about investing. They need to teach you about public speaking. They need to teach you about, having crucial conversations. How to deal with people that are unruly. I don't know how to encapsulate that better, but there you go. So, I think it's interesting is that's what I want to say that that's really what we're trying to do here. It's about for ourselves, education, and everybody who wants to come with. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. For me.
Take the ticket. Wait, buy the ticket. Take the ride.
Buy the ticket. I like that, dude. I like that. Buy the ticket, take the ride. We may even have to implement that into our little tagline. I like that. Buy the ticket, take the ride.
I can't take credit for that.
Yeah, well, we can use it in
Sure,
an application of what we're trying to do, right? And we can give reference because we are of Zero Trust acknowledge identifying sources of truth and giving them proper recognition, because that's also important, right? Because if a source of truth is somewhere in the future, which it always happens, especially in scientific method, is upended, we can reassess, re-update, and then further have a conversation from it. But until we create that overlying, like, these are the things that we're addressing, and what are things that people are in general agreement about, what are things people are absolutely not in agreement about, and then being able to go through with that, we're not going to be able to have anything that is anything having to do with trust at all.
Yeah.
And this is why we're doing Zero Trust.
Yeah. That brings me back to an idea that we kind of discussed in our pre-show conversation about a truly zero trust network would be completely static, would be completely offline, would be completely useless. Right?
Yep.
So
why?
We can't
Talk
be
about
completely useless. We can't be offline.
No.
Nope. But we still need to take that ideal of having zero trust and then looking at all the different nodes that are in our network, all of the different endpoints, all of the different biases, all of the different narratives, and saying, okay, do these serve a useful purpose? Is there a reason for me to believe whatever it is that I believe? And we're just going to go through event after event, news story after news story, source after source, and say, maybe. But we looked at it. We got it in our head, but we didn't commit to it. And that's I think, where we want to end up. We have a lot of information, and from that, we can synthesize the next step. But always keeping in the back of our heads, hey, we still may not have all the truth.
Absolutely. Let me, because I wrote this down as we were going over our notes earlier, and thank you for bringing it back to that, Entropy Sword. So previously on a Zero Trust cast, it was brought to my attention, or our attention, that we did not have any proposed or any documents to reference, right? Which we were going to be like doing more and more. Some were provided to me, and we'll do that more as well. In response to this, we will address sources somewhat, but we are not the news, right? So ultimately, what we're saying to everybody, don't trust us. Find your sources.
Yeah.
This is the thing that we're doing. We're finding our sources. This is the conversation. We are not stating this good, this bad. We're not saying American politics are good or bad. We're not saying the Federal Reserve is good or bad. We are saying we're suspects of all of them. We're trying to analyze and try to get at a point to where we may be able to understand that, but we do not as of yet. But they are under question, as everything should be in a Zero Trust. So this is what we will do. So this is a free-form dissection of thought process, period. That's what we're doing. We're dissecting our thought processes, as well as I hope you guys do as well, okay? That we have throughout the week and what's happening in the world. That's what's happening, right? This is what made us go like, we're going to do this. Because we already had these thoughts. We already had these things come up to us. But now we're truly going like, whoa, something's really happened. Something's really changed. Now let's take it a step further. Let's put it out on an avenue that we can do, like YouTube and Twitch, to be able to further open it up for the conversations that we have, which I very much love. And I can't speak for Entropy Sword, but I believe he does the same. That's why we're here doing it. Yep. And that's why that smile and that absolutely came from it. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we will eventually have resources up there for you guys to reference that we will use, but question them, poke holes in them, because we are not bringing them all. We're bringing them from people that we may trust a little bit, from both Entropy Sword and I, but absolutely do not trust them 100%. The opposite. Create them as a non-trust thing and create why we should or should not trust them. Yeah. And maybe, hopefully, one day we can extrapolate really, truly the amount of data, who trusts, who doesn't, and we can go from there. Go ahead. Sorry to go so long.
I mean, that's a good way to wrap it up, I think. There's going to be many narratives that will pop up, that will be explored, that will be looked at. Don't take any of them as any more than a story, but understand that all human beings function on the stories in their head. So
well said.
That's why we do it in this format. Not because it's like a really good way for us to find the truth, because it's not really, right? It's a really good way for us to start to understand the narratives in our head. And if we do that, maybe we'll find the truth.
Right. And we're doing that in an open forum.
Yeah.
Not just a private discussion between Entropy Sword and I, but a very open discussion with everybody on the internet that has this address.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like we're hiding it. Like, we want you to share it. Like, it is, we want to have, like, if there is a better group of people that do this, give it to us.
Yeah.
Show us why we should be doing better, right? How we should be better. Those are things that we're interested in too. Zero trust. Don't trust our ability to provide you the best material to consume so that you can help understand the world better, because that's ultimately one of our goals. We want to help you understand things because I want to understand things.
Yeah, we're trying to understand all of this massive data input, right? You can surf all day and you can just boom, 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 hit your head. Let it percolate, and then maybe we need to have a conversation. Maybe you need to go out to somebody else who doesn't always see things the same way that you do, and say, here's my narrative. Does that make any sense? Is it even coherent? And that's what we're doing here.
Yes. Advising you to go out to the people that you trust on a level, right? In this zero trust podcast that we're suggesting that you identify with and try to take on as a persona of, I trust nobody. Now investigate, not trust anything that you believe, and anybody that's close to you, don't believe it. But then build from that how you can actually build trust now that you think everything is suspect.
Yep.
I love that. It's a breaking down and a building up of something that we can be better. So again, everything is a positive force, I think, that we're doing. And if you guys ever feel different, please leave a like and a comment. Well, fucking life. Now I sound like I'm fucking selling fucking YouTube shit. I apologize for that, folks. But like, leave a comment, seriously, because it's important. I want to hear what you're thinking. I really do, because that's important to me.
Yeah, the whole point is to have this conversation widen, to bring in more people, right?
Yep.
And I know that we're not the only people who are like, something needs to change in how I think. Something needs to be upgraded in terms of my cognition. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, because we're in a world that is so filled with data and information, misinformation, quasi-information,
inundation,
whatever you want to call it, right? We're so swamped that we have to have these conversations.
Yeah,
it's the only way.
To help us go like, hey, are you feeling this? Yeah, I'm feeling that. Okay, cool. Let's break it down together. Not just one, but two. And hopefully more, because that's the thing. We want everybody, including the people that are still thinking about magic internet money. Thank you, Bertzilla. I think that's awesome. Magic internet money, baby.
What is it?
There you go.
We don't know.
True. Well, we hopefully figure that out. Seriously. And if you have any insights on what that is, please advise us, because we would like to know also. Yeah. Seriously.
Because we could sit here and we could read through the white paper, the PDF for Bitcoin, and learn nothing, right?
Or something. Yes, we may not get to where we need to be, and maybe we'll do that from time to time. Maybe we will monotonously read through things and break apart time and time again, because sometimes we actually need to do that. But let's see. Let's start with conversations first, and what sparks are like, hey, wait, like this seems like a thing, because we can also extrapolate too. Now, does this mean like this is what we're going to be doing, and we're really not zero trust? We're just kind of quasi trust? No, we're still zero trust. We're still open to everybody questioning what we think, and absolutely we don't hold a candle to truth. We're just trying to identify and understand what it is.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's going to make this whole second section just about an hour, which I think is the limit of asking an audience. I mean, it's a lot to ask an audience to sit and listen to this for an hour because it is dense and it goes in a lot of directions.
True.
So if you're still listening, thank you very much. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Love you. Keep questioning things. Seriously, be with us. Like, be passionate about your life. This is why we do it. We are both very passionate about our life. I'm going to speak for Entropy Sorta on this point, but he's shaking his head too. We are passionate. Seriously, we're only looking for a semblance of truth and what we can identify as an actual truth, right? Being in a zero trust state. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And thank you for dealing with our problems as we go through them. And that's what happens in life. That's okay. We can still push through.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. And have a good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.